Been a lot of conversations. We have an officer who's present now who we're asking to escort people from the room if their conversations become audible up here to the board. If you have a conversation, if you want to make a conversation, please step out of the hall. Thank you. We're going to go on the record. All right, at this point in the proceedings, Ms. Jones, Mr. Whitaker, whoever you'd like to call to testify on behalf of your arguments, we're happy to hear from you at this time.
At this time, I would like to call Ms. Julia Matthews.
All right, Ms. Matthews, that's M-A-T-T-H-E-W-S.
Yes.
And Julia, J-U-L-I-A?
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Matthews. What would you like to tell the board?
Oh, I would like to tell the board I've been in that neighborhood, Douglas Home, for 67 years. I raised 9 children in there. I used to be the head of tenant council, and I was on the RAB board down for the House and Authority with Mr. Bob Emery. And I've been in all the neighborhood, and I was on the Catholic Board of Education. And Dunbar helped build that school up. And I definitely, with Dew Burns, right up there looking down on me, I worked with him and Hattie Harris in that neighborhood. We built it up. We got Lombard High School, which is 2 blocks away from the convenience store. We got elementary school, City Spring, which is the same district. And down on the corner of Fayette and Eden Street is a liquor store. And on the corner of Fayette and Central Avenue is a beer bar. And all of those children that have to come past there, they pass right across from his store. And I don't think it's a good idea to have the liquor, any kind of liquor, when you have little children around trying to raise them. And I have worked with the neighborhood volunteers since I was 65. I'm 87 now. And I even come down here and volunteer. But I like it because if he only sell food and ordinaries and not no liquor, we don't need no more liquor place in that neighborhood. From Central Avenue back to Caroline Street, that's 3 places with this place, and that's not good. We have a harder time there trying to raise children, especially in Douglas Home. And we have 300 some units in there, and it's hard. And further down, going to the post office, a block away, we have Pleasant View, right at St. Vincent Church. By the post office, we have St. Vincent Church, Father Lawrence, Dick Lawrence, and all around Flag House. We don't need, and some of those children come from West Baltimore, ride the subway. They come up Fayette Street. And I don't think it's a good idea to have no more liquor place around there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Matthews. Any questions for Ms. Matthews, Mr. Kadensky?
No questions.
All right, thank you. Next witness.
That's all the witnesses.
All right, Mr. Whitaker.
Ms. Jones, you're not going to give any testimony?
Yes, he asked me for witnesses.
Right, but you're also a witness too. I should have mentioned that, yeah. All right, you're ready, so it's your turn to take the witness stand at this point. All right, thank you.
Yes, I thank you all for allowing the community to come and express their opinion. I was always taught that the community do have a voice. The public housing community is one community that's been stigmatized for years. And then when you get activists in and council representatives in to change the procedure and protocol of public housing living within itself, it gets kind of hard when you have someone that comes and contradict what you're trying to do. We have no problem with any store opening up in the community that will actually benefit the community. One of the things we did do in meeting with the current store owner, in the meeting, we asked him if he did agree, and this is my testimony, not to question him.
Right.
We asked him if we did agree you opening up a store in our community, would you agree to hiring some of the residents here? One of the suggestions I gave him was, why don't you start hiring the school-age boys? Our boys have a hard time getting jobs. And because a lot of stores come in the community, they hire their own family. I had a problem with you not wanting to get back to the community. Our community in Douglas Home, Somerset area is normally dominated by the John Hopkins community, which means even at times we don't even have a place to park. So we even have to fight for parking spaces. One of the #1 targets for the public housing community is drugs and alcohol. And they're not the drugs that people think anymore, they're prescription drugs that's taking over. I have gained joint forces with Southeastern Police District, where they now interacting and helping us clean up the community. Now, I do mind you all, I lived in the Douglas Home community all my life for 55 years. My mother's name is Martha Rose Benton, who was the Resident Advisory Board President. I do sit on 10 other tenant council boards in the surrounding Baltimore community. And to see that alcohol and drugs has dominated the thinking capacity of our young people, our young, not allow our old, in the public housing community where the store is right in front of Douglas Home. It sits right on the same block. In that area, and we're surrounded by traffic from Orleans Street, Fayette Street, and Caroline Street. We done had children that get killed on those streets by cars, from drunk drivers or those that was under the influence of something. We don't look for statistics that ever rise. Across from this store, there's a park. There's a public park that's owned by the city of Baltimore. But in that park, there is harbor a lot of people that don't have a job, that don't do nothing all day long. One drink will stir up a fight. One drink will cause someone else to get hurt when they was not even involved in the situation. And then finally, if I will conclude, in that community, when a public housing resident is involved in the situation, then the lease can be terminated because it might be from alcohol, because it might be from any form of substance. They have to come get me. I would have to come and clean up their activity, overlooking, oh, we all voted for another liquor store in the community. Those tenants do not have a luxury of being able to act radical. They're not down their Camden Yard. They can't throw things around. In their lease clause calls them, if they don't clean up the surrounding areas, they can get terminated from their lease. So it's a must that they clean up anyhow, because if not, they're in breach of their lease. And when these people are under the influence, if they don't have a strong person that they respect, a strong person that they will answer to, there's a no-hold-bar situation that goes on. Public housing. We got a lot of public housing in the surrounding area. And every school that's in that area have to come across that one store. And even the statistics, because kids, teenagers are exploring and getting into things, parents are now going to jail because their kids are not in school, which the #1 thing that caused them not to go is alcohol and drugs. And we can't see another parent get locked up because a child decided to hook school again, or because their attendance not. And the little kids that found it convenient to come to the convenience store where he's located, it was adequate for them because they didn't have to cross the street. It was perfect. And now that they will not have that availability because we have 3 other convenience stores in that area. But that one protected the safety of the children. That we applaud for this store, that we encourage us for this store, that the community will uphold them in this just being a convenience store. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me
Questions?
just ask you very briefly, when you mentioned about the fact that it's a convenience store, that seemed to be all right with the community.
Yes, I'm fine.
And the way he operates his store is okay?
That's fine. He's responsible for his own
Yeah.
operations.
And he cleans up around there?
I have never noticed him per se to be there. The corners stay crowded with a lot of young people, but that's another argument.
Well, do you have the young people have an alcohol problem there in your community now?
Of course, there's alcohol in several communities.
Where are they getting their alcohol now?
I can't tell you, I don't watch and go to the store.
So you don't know. What kind of outlets are close to your community?
As we reminded you, right now, there's 3 other liquor stores in that community.
So would you think they're getting their alcohol from those stores now?
I can't tell you, I don't go to the store with them.
But they do get it.
Do they get what? Drink?
Alcohol.
I can't tell you, it's against the law, I have an open container.
Yeah, but do you know that do you have a problem with alcohol now with the community? Young people.
Do I know from statistics?
But
Statistics,
from your own personal knowledge.
from my personal knowledge, my knowledge is based on statistics.
Statistics, but not personal knowledge.
Statistics say public housing people are alcoholics and drug users.
No, but there are other people living there in that
But you're asking
area
me.
other than public housing people.
No, the area we talking about is strictly public.
How about across the
housing.
street? That's public
That's
housing?
public housing, whole 6 is public
All those
housing.
houses rented are public housing,
Yes,
up to John Hopkins.
up to John Hopkins, Lester Morton is still subsidized housing.
I know for
Thank you.
I have one question. You said that when you spoke with Mr. Singh, you asked him if he would hire the residents?
Yes, I did.
I'm not sure that you told us what the answer was. What was his answer?
He said he already had somebody working there, and he thought that was sufficient.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other witnesses, or at this time, Mr. Whitaker will call his witness.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask the board to admit, or at least consider for admission after opportunity for objections, my letter of March 28th, which included a petition with it.
Yeah, it's in here. You want to take a look at that? You have. All right, any objection to the petition in opposition? All right, I believe we're going to make that protestants 2. The first was Councilman Stokes' letter.
Thank you. And I have one of the signers of the petition here. I'd like to ask him a couple questions.
Sure.
Mr. Jackson, can you state your name and address for the record, please?
My name is Ricky Jackson. I live at 1014 Commerce Street in Pleasant View Gardens.
How do you spell Ricky?
R-I-C-K-Y.
Thank you. How long have you lived in that area?
About 17 years.
And why are you here today to testify?
I mean, personally, my opinion, I think that our community needs something else. I think we need like laundromats. I think we need a grocery store because the one on Broadway burned down. These are for people that don't have cars to get around and stuff like that. I think that would be more important, for the community than another liquor store. That's just my opinion. We got one down the street, Mr. B owns that. Then we have one further down the street, and people own that. We have another one on Broadway.
So do you think that people in the community will be impacted if the prospective licensee takes away half of his store area for liquor?
Say again.
If the licensee takes away half of his convenience store area for liquor, how do you think that will affect people in the neighborhood?
Yeah, because you're going to have people hanging around there begging for money just the same way they do everywhere else.
And how would the reduction in groceries or the convenience side affect the community?
I just don't think it's a good idea for us.
Do you know, you said you live in the area, so you pass by the area of the store frequently?
Yes, not frequent enough because I don't have to go all the way up there.
Do you see children going in and out of the store when you do see it?
But if I do pass by that way, yes.
So you think it's fair to say that children frequent the store as it currently is operated?
Yes, and I like the store myself because, like I said, it saved me a couple of times for things I need to get from the market. The market's burnt down. I need a bag of potatoes. I was able to come in this store and get it, and no problem.
Mr. Jackson, have you been compensated for your appearance here today in any way?
No, I have not.
No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Kadensky.
How far away do you live from the store, Mr. Jackson?
About 2 blocks. That's what Pleasant View is.
All right. And then how often do you say you go by the store?
I don't really make it up to get the store up that way with you guys, but listen, I really need to go up there because it's convenient, like I say, and you guys have the things that I like to, eat and stuff, and without going to the market. See, I live by myself, not a very good cook. There's some things that you guys have there.
So you like going in there?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
If I need
And
to.
it's convenient for you?
It's convenient.
All right. And you say that there's another liquor store. How close are the other liquor stores to this store?
Well, it's actually 2 right down from me.
Do you go to those stores?
Yes, I do.
Can't get food there, can you?
No.
I don't think so. The other stores, do they have parking, or they have to park on the street?
Well, no, they don't have parking.
Yeah. Are they handicap accessible?
I have no
You don't know? Okay, I have no further questions.
All right, thank you. Well, you know what, I do have a couple questions for you, Mr. Jackson. Do people hang out and ask for change in front of Joy Liquors?
Yeah, they do.
Do people, do the customers, the liquor store customers, do they disrupt the community as they come and go?
I'm not gonna say to disrupt the community. I mean, it's just, it's like I said, it's a high tolerance drug and alcohol area. So you're gonna expect a lot of things in that area. But wherever they have liquor stores and stuff like that, there are always gonna be people out there, panhandlers they call it, asking for money. And sometimes, you know, we don't like to go there because we don't want to be bothered. You know, me myself, even. I go there, I only take what I need because I don't like to be pestered about money all the time. I get tired of it.
Thank you. Anything? Any redirect? Any?
Nothing, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. All right, any other witnesses?
I guess, no. I mean, I don't think Mr. Lee actually needs to testify. I think
No, I think you can make argument at the end.
Can I ask you a question?
No, no. All right, thank you very much. Any other any other testimony?
no more testimony from the protest side.
Any
No,
rebuttal? Closing arguments.
In closing, I don't want to make this thing like the Hatfields and the McCoys. You always have a situation where there's some people are for things and some people aren't. The fact that people come into the city and come down Fayette Street should not be any shock to anybody here. People come down here to go to City Hall, they come down to go to Hopkins, they come down to go to a lot of events. For some reason, you know, there's a lot of arguments saying that it has to be in a portion of the community you can't come down to. I'm sure if you're running out of gas and that gas station on the corner is there, you would say, I don't care whose community it is, I need gas. And the same thing with regard to this establishment that's been there. There's nobody who's testified has been anything other than he's operated as a good place. What is the difference between this place and the other places we're there? A, they don't have food, they don't serve a convenience store, they don't serve any of the communities there. And the fact that one community out of half a dozen that are there, you know, has an objection should not, you know, be the prevalent argument here. This particular store, you can look at the pictures, you can see that it's very well kept. It has, it's painted very well. It has parking spaces, it's handicapped parking spaces. It has everything you want. What's your big objection when you hear people say, hey, where are you going to put the people? There's no parking. You hear that all the time. You have that here. I had 1,000 people sign a petition. If I had 1,000 customers, I'd be pretty good. And if they came in here and conducted themselves properly, whether they were from 2 blocks away or 22 blocks away, what difference does it make? Coors Light is made in Colorado. They ship that Coors Light to every place that's here. They don't just ship it down to Douglas Homes. So it's the same bottle of Coors Light everybody gets somewhere else. The problem is to have the opportunity. Is it the same legislative district? It's the same legislative district. So what do? You say, well, you can't move it here, and you can't move it here, and you can't move it here. And all these people here, the 40 people there were here testifying. Well, we discount all them, and we only take the other people. You start picking and choosing as to what you want to go ahead and do here. The other people that are here testifying against it, the one is a competitor. I understand competition. You have a BP station and an Exxon station right there. Well, one would like to not be the other one to be there. So the fact that, you know, sometimes competition is the highest form of flattery, you know, that you're doing all right. Is there a drug and alcohol problem in the city? Tell me, you answer that. It's a rhetorical question. It is. Alcohol by itself or beer by itself is not inherently dangerous. It's the person or personal responsibility who takes it and overindulges in it and causes a problem. If somebody serves the minors, then they deserve to be punished and deserve to have their license taken away. There's none of that here with regard to this individual. He's otherwise led and had done things in the community. He cleans up in the community. Will everybody be happy with him? Absolutely not. You can see they're not going to be happy with him. Will the competitor be happy with him? No, they're not going to be happy with him. But you get an opportunity to go ahead and see. And the councilman, I understand what they're saying. They're taking up for some of their people. But just answer the question. If you disagree with me, say, I disagree, no. Yes. Don't go in some long harangue about, there's the fact that there's drugs and alcohol in the city. There's drugs and alcohol everywhere. People are being shot and killed in their cars and stuff. It has nothing to do with alcohol.
Mr. Kudinski, I'm sorry.
Let's wait till closing.
Okay.
And I think somewhere along the line here is that is the question is it a plebiscite? Is it a question of how close you are to it? If there were 100 people that lived at the top of this thing, would they have more of a reason to have a voice here? I think that when you look into the situation, the people that had come here, the 40 or so people that came there, and the ones that testify, they're all in that neighborhood. Some other people don't like it. Some people don't want any alcohol. You refer to studies. You refer to statistics. Well, statistics are just that. People are people. If you hold people responsible, then you've got something. If you hold somebody responsible for serving a minor, then you've got something. If you hold somebody, who shouldn't be drinking, responsible, then you've got something. You don't have that here. It's a what if. What if they otherwise run a good establishment and everybody else around there doesn't run it? Does that make him any better than anyone? Yes, it certainly would. He didn't have the opportunity to do that. So I think he's met that opportunity, met that burden of proof, and demographics as to how many people live there. If I had a store and people came from Reisterstown Road just to buy my product, what am I going to say? Oh, you're from Reisterstown Road, you can't come in here. I mean, it's a silly argument.
All right, thank you. Mr. Whitaker.
Thank you. Mr. Kudensky mentioned in his closing that that there was no difference between the prospective competitors and this store, but there is a difference because this is a new liquor outlet in this community. The board's obligation, as you know, is to administer the liquor laws with concern for the health and safety and welfare of the communities that are served by them. And I don't think that there's any evidence that's been introduced that this restaurant license from a Chinese restaurant in downtown should be appropriately moved to this community and turned from a business that's been operating very relatively short period of time and turn it into a liquor store. It's currently a convenience store, and it's frequented, the testimony I believe was, by young children. It's near several schools. It's also, and I would ask the board to take judicial notice, that it's also near several rehabilitation centers for drugs and alcohol, including a Step Forward, Terrence Rehabilitation Unit, Powell Recovery Center, Valley House. So this is obviously an area where this is a problem. The petition that was introduced, although I don't believe it was admitted into evidence.
It's received as protestants too.
I'm not referring to the protesters' petition, Mr. Chairman. I actually don't believe that their petition was ever actually formally introduced into evidence.
No, I did receive it. If you'll notice on backs of actually 2 pages, I've marked it as applicants 1, and then when I got it back,
Yeah.
the page had been flipped, so I relabeled it on the back page, applicants 1. So the board has received it.
It's not from people in the area. If you examine it, it does appear that there may be some juveniles who have signed it. These are not the people in the community that would be, that are actually going to be impacted by this change of the business. The protesters' petition is signed by 330 actual residents, adult residents of the area. These are people that the statement said at the beginning are concerned that the community doesn't need more liquor outlets and in fact needs more grocery sales, not less. And the petitioners, the applicants' demographic evidence doesn't even support. It says within 3 miles there, it's under service, but that includes where we're standing all the way over to where the restaurant that the license is being transferred from. Finally, about Mr. Singh, I mean, this is a relatively young business in this area. It's a little difficult for me to understand how the roots could have been so deeply buried in the community within a year. But I believe the testimony was that the licensee and his family or cousins run at least one other liquor store. I would think that a reasonable inference from that testimony and the timing of this application is that Mr. Singh never really intended to run a grocery store, that he intended to make
I
this
don't usually
into.
object
It's
to closing.
closing, it's argument.
It's really, we had a line there.
We're
There's
gonna-
nothing there. You were supposed to close on
Not-
things that were submitted.
I understand, it's just argument, and I'm gonna overrule it.
That it's a reasonable inference that this was intended to be a convenient liquor store rather than a convenience store from the beginning. And of course, there's the issue of whether or not things were exchanged for signatures. It was admitted that pizza was delivered, was given to people for their participation, at least today. And I think that that surely doesn't show that the community, it doesn't show real community support. And I think that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Whitaker. Ms. Jones, very briefly, anything, last word?
My closing arguments would consist that being an activist for a community such as the Douglas Home community, you have to have certain skills and certain instincts. Being a former City Hall resident of the City Hall Law Department, being a product of public housing, upon my retirement here, Housing Authority of Baltimore City commissioned me to come work for them and run various training programs in the public housing community, surrounded by the entities that was already in the community, because their aim and their goal was to teach that you can overcome your environment. And in overcoming the environment, you have to introduce them to the things that will cause you to become a statistic to your environment. We are fully aware of the panhandling, but you have to also understand that because of the homeless shelters that are down in the area, helping up Mission St. Vincent, you're going to have a lot of these. And the number one concerns in my closing arguments is that being an advocate for East Baltimore, this not only goes for the Douglas Humps community, but this goes for all the surrounding community from Broadway to Fells Point area, that those of low income status deserve respect, that those of income should have a voice, that if they say no, that no should be respected, that no should be understood. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to go off the record. So let's bring them up. All right, let's go back on the record. All right, before the board deliberates, board wants to ask Mr. Singh a couple of questions.
As additional testimony?
No, as specific, well, I mean, I'll tell you straight up as his counsel. We're interested if your client is interested in considering brief voluntary license restrictions as we deliberate. Specifically, would your client agree not to sell 40-ounce beers, shorties, which we'll determine as 100 milliliter bottles of liquor, and miniatures, which we determine as a 50 milliliter bottle of liquor?
And in addition to restricting your operating hours to not sell alcohol prior to 9 a.m.
Do you need a minute with counsel?
He'll be all right with that.
He understands that if the board were to approve the license, these would be license restrictions which he had voluntarily agreed to.
You understand it?
Yes, I do.
Do you have any other questions for your counsel? No. All right. Board's going to deliberate. We're off the record. Let's go on the record in our decision phase for April 4, 2013. Kuldeep Singh, ALZ Incorporated, 1434 East Fayette Street. This is an application to transfer ownership and location of a D license from 406 Park Avenue to 1434 East Fayette Street. Board has interviewed Mr. Singh. We've heard from several witnesses. Ms. Jones from Douglas Homes and Somerset led the case for the protestants in this matter. We heard from Councilman Stokes and Councilman Branch as well. Mr. Joshua Whitaker represented a neighboring licensee and also presented a witness testimony. Mr. Singh has been in business for nearly a year at 1434 East Fayette Street. He attended a community meeting, at least one, more, to discuss his plans with the community. Mr. Singh has family and experience in connection with other licensed establishments in Baltimore City. Mr. Singh was cross-examined and by Ms. Jones and Mr. Whitaker. We heard from Lila Stewart, who is a resident and on the board of Johnson Square, and spent time on the board of Johnson Square and Old Town Community Association. Said that he was a good business neighbor. Ms. Stewart's a 46-year resident of the neighborhood. Ms. Stewart also indicated that the licensee or the applicant had been charitable with the community, and that there had been volunteer cleanup done on the premises and in the surrounding community by either Mr. Singh or someone that he had contracted to perform cleaning. The board heard from Mr. Thomas, who has in fact cleaned for the applicant before and who testified in support. Ms. Katrina Lane, who indicates she's on the Perkins Homes Board, testified that the license or the applicant was ran a clean operation from the location. We did hear testimony that there are schools in the area and that there are a lot of children who do pass through the neighborhood. Michael Moore testified. Mr. Moore is supportive of the business and said that the business is supportive of the neighborhood, and the applicant has been altruistic on occasions. We heard from Mr. Albin regarding the number of liquor licenses in the vicinity, and from him that indeed there is a parking lot at the premises. We did hear from Councilman Stokes. Councilman Stokes' testimony was not received due to responsiveness, but we did receive his letter in opposition to the prospective liquor store. We heard from Miss Julia Matthews, then, who's a 67-year resident, raised 9 children in the neighborhood, telling us indeed that there are a couple of schools within a couple of blocks of the proposed area, indicating that there's a liquor store at Fayette and Eden and a bar at Fayette and Central, and doesn't believe that it's good for children to pass a bar or liquor store on their way to or from school. We heard from Ms. Jones as a witness, indicating that the store was not a nuisance without a liquor license. She's a 55-year resident of the area and Douglas Homes, and she indicated that alcohol and drugs dominate the community. We also heard from Mr. Ricky Jackson, who is a resident and who also is a customer of a liquor store across the street. He testified that he believed that they don't need another liquor store in the neighborhood, and perhaps a laundromat or some other business would be better for the community. We heard, but it was not in evidence. It wasn't until closing that we started hearing about rehab centers and homeless shelters. In the case in chief, that really wasn't before this board. We did hear about schools, though, and that's what we have to base our decision on. The board reopened the evidence to asked the applicant if he would enter into voluntary license restrictions. He agreed that he, if granted a license, would agree to sell no beer, no 40-ounce beers or quarts of beer. No shorties, which are defined as 100 milliliter bottles of spirits, no miniatures, which are 50 milliliter bottles of spirits, and that he would not sell alcohol before 9 a.m. So the board is torn, literally. We have, on the one hand, an applicant who has spent a very short time in the community, but has apparently endeared himself enough to some residents to bring out a pretty decent crowd of support. I don't think a piece of pizza is really enough compensation to make somebody go and take a half a day off from work to come downtown, so I don't know that the pizza's the motivator here. It's obvious that he's been able to be generous to customers, and it's obvious that most people don't think he's running a bad business right now. Even the protestants have generally admitted that we like the business there, and that might be the reason we don't want it to change, because we want it to be a store. We're worried we'll lose floor space for the items and the products that we enjoy about that place. Now, there's been a lot of talk about this petition that we've admitted into evidence. It's one of the larger petitions the board has received in years. And indeed, there are lots of signatures from far away from the neighborhood. But there are also, and maybe because of its volume of over 1,000 signatures, there are also lots of signatures from Dallas Court, from Douglas, from Fayette Street, from Ballou Court, from East 1400 block of East Fayette. So the petition is broad in scope. The board obviously would prefer a petition to be as local as it can, or at least maybe tab the local area, maybe get a separate petition for the local people to sign. It would be easier to see. But it's clear that there is some public need and desire for this request. The questions really become about the general health, safety, and welfare of the community. And the board, by a 2-to-1 vote, with Commissioner Jones dissenting, believes that there is just enough evidence here, by a preponderance of the evidence, to determine that there is in fact a public need and desire for the license based on the testimony, based on the petition in support, and we will go ahead and find that need and desire. There was little argument or testimony about an impact on an existing licensee. There, in fact, probably the best arguments were made by the other side, by the applicant, saying that he's going to be cheaper because the competition is more expensive because there's no competition. Baltimore is, when it comes to competition, this board looks to the various factors, including the density of the neighborhood, and in this case, you have 3 licenses on East Fayette. While you may have up to, we've heard argument that there was up to 6 licenses in the general area. We're looking at Fayette Street. Fayette Street is a relatively commercial corridor. Some people live on East Fayette, but more people do business on East Fayette. They get their computer repaired, they get gas, they go to the convenience store. And so the board doesn't believe that one more license in that area is going to have a significant impact, potential effect on the existing licensees. The board finds that with the parking lot, which no other license, as far as we heard, no other licensed establishment has a parking lot in the neighborhood, so the parking's not going to be an issue. And then we're left with anecdotal evidence about, this liquor store is going to hurt people, and we're unable to find a causal connection in many of the arguments and the testimony that's been made today. We hear about drunk drivers on Fayette Street, and they're obviously not getting their liquor from Mr. Singh, and they're driving drunk. And we're hearing about loitering, and there's loitering at the competition. We hear that kids are on the corner of the store, but we really didn't hear testimony that children hang out in the store, and skip school, things like that. Miss Jones, I think, said it herself. He's responsible for his own operation. And that is about all we can ask for a licensee to be, is responsible for his own operation. The majority feels that there will be a de minimis impact on general health, safety, and welfare of the community based on what I just said. The minority opinion by Commissioner Jones does not believe that there is a public need and desire for this license. So for the reasons we've given, we're going to go ahead by a 2-to-1 vote and approve this license, subject to license restrictions, wherein Mr. Singh will not be permitted to sell 40-ounce or 32-ounce beers. Is that clear, Mr. Koninsky? Okay. And not to sell 100 milliliter or 50 milliliter bottles of liquor, and not to sell liquor, beer, wine, or liquor before 9 a.m. All right, so that is our decision. Thank you very much. We are off the record.